Alex Damon, if you've never tuned in before. And with me, as always, is Molly.
Hi.
Hi.
It's me.
How are you?
I feel so weird introducing myself.
I know. I still am not used to it either. You talk about like every podcast, they do a little introduction, and you're right. It's a good thing to do, but it feels weird.
Yeah. We're going to keep joking about how weird it feels until it feels right.
It will never feel right, I don't think. But we're going to get into some episode discussion for episode 10 here. But as usual, we are not alone. We have two great guests today from around the galaxy. We have Pete Flutzer, and from Podcast of the Whills, we have Nick. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us. This is a pleasure and a thrill and an honor. So, and all those other, gratuitous words of thanks. So thank you very much. This is great.
Well, let me first, before we get into the episode, just ask you, how are you feeling about The Bad Batch as a series, and specifically this second season? Pete, I think we had you on for a season 1 episode, but Nick, we've never heard from you about just The Bad Batch and what you like or dislike about it.
Absolutely.
I hope you like it.
I do like it. In fact, if I'm the guy, if I didn't like it, I probably wouldn't have been here today. So we're good in that department. I am of an age where like the Clone Wars was not a thing that I really paid a lot of attention to until later, because I was just too old for it at that point when it came out, that kind of thing. And so I kind of came back to the Clone Wars later, and I'd say all the time that I used the Clone Wars like a reference book. Like I really got into Rebels, and I would go back and watch arcs in the Clone Wars that referred to the Darksaber or Mortis or whatever the thing was that I was like, oh, I need to know more about that. So when Clone Wars Season 7 came out, I was super excited. Although that episode with the first 4 with the Bad Batch didn't do a ton for me, I was just like, okay, this is neat, whatever. I was there for Ahsoka and Maul and, that stuff at the end. But when the first season started, I guess now 2 years ago when it came on, I was in from the very beginning. Like something about this story and these characters grabbed me. I'm sure part of it is because I'm a girl dad. And so that family dynamic, was a part of that. And then coming into the second season, honestly, I think I liked the second season even more than I did the first season. I really like the things that they're building. It's kind of, I hate to use this terrible cliche, but it is a slow burn kind of season, especially for animation, but it's building what I think is a lot of cool stuff and filling in some gaps.
Pete, how are you feeling about season 2?
Yeah, it's funny. Season 2, it's I was super pumped for it because I really enjoyed season 1. It's one of the few shows other than Mandalorian that my 10-year-old son was like counting down the days for. It was interesting, and I think especially from a timing perspective, coming after Andor, and I have some thoughts about that I'll probably share a little later, but he had no interest in Andor. So that was kind of my own show, and I just kind of watched. That was my own Star Wars experience for all those weeks. And this afternoon, I picked him up from school. He said, "You didn't watch The Bad Batch, did you yet?" And I was like, "Well, kind of had to because I'm talking to some people tonight." But it's a show that we're
going to throw us under the bus. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, sure. I'll blame you guys. But what's interesting about it is I'm really enjoying this season, even with the pace of the season is I feel like it's a little bit different than last year, but I'm really enjoying it. I don't think there's been an episode that I kind of didn't like. I've found something about every single episode that's been worth exploring further.
I totally agree on the different pacing, and it's something that I feel like I'm still getting used to. That I really liked the pacing of the first season. I thought it was really pretty fast, and everything. I was like, I can see where this is headed. And season 2, I feel like they're taking their time a lot more. But Nick, what is it about season 2 that is making you enjoy it more?
I think it honestly is what I mentioned before, kind of what they're building. Something that stood out to me in the first season was a lot of what this series is doing is it's connecting points between, in the sequel, the prequels, the end of the clones. And I think kind of one of my big picture theories is going to tie into that. And we may talk about that later. But like in the first season, in the episode with the cut and run episode, when we started hearing about chain codes, because we had gotten a little drop of chain codes in Mandalorian with Boba. And then we figure out, oh, this is government registration. This is that transfer from the old Republic into what's going to be the Empire. And so that transition from clones into stormtroopers into the Empire as we know it in the original trilogy, and we get even more of that. The episode a couple weeks ago, the double episode week with the clones and the decommissioning of the clones. Like I love process stories. I love behind the scenes stuff. So this kind of feels like Empire behind the scenes. Like we're getting to learn about what went on, not only on a big scale, but like we see in this episode on a small scale for that transition and how these bad guys became these bad guys and the things that happened. So it speaks to me in kind of a weird behind the scenes kind of way.
I feel the same about the Clone Wars because it came out, I forget when it came out, but we were in college, right? Yeah, we were in college when it came out. So it wasn't even really on my radar at the time. And seeing a show like The Bad Batch, especially going into season 2, when we are covering more of the clone arc and the clone story, like it's making me appreciate the Clone Wars so much more. And a lot of other stuff has done that along this journey too. But like this season specifically has made me like really excited to see what happens and like really rooting for the clones. And it's awesome to see people who grew up watching this show rooting for them as well.
Yeah, to play off of that, it's interesting because you're seeing clones as bad guys for the first time ever as well, right? You're seeing them, and it's to me that's kind of a cool way to see them. It's kind of they became obviously we're seeing how that became stormtroopers, etc. But it's interesting to see them as bad guys, and it's also what I find very interesting about this season is it's both a much more personal story because you're getting really into the deep dynamic of the Bad Batch themselves and Omega and what they're dealing with. But I feel like this one has the bigger, to what Nick was saying, the bigger galactic implication, which is a really interesting way that they're balancing both. And maybe Alex, that's kind of why we're sensing a different sort of feel to it, because it really is, it's like the Star Wars movies. The Star Wars movies were always, Luke and Leia, you cared what was happening there, but everything they were doing was to take care of this big galactic problem. Sort of the same thing here. They're sort of being exposed now to that. We're being exposed to this big changeover, and it's great to see they're able to tell both stories at once.
And I think that's a great point to talk about the changeover and not just like the big picture galactic empire, which those are like the episode 7 and 8 were some of my favorites. And episode 3 was fantastic, and seeing how the Republic became the Empire. But I also think, even though I was just kind of like, this episode was okay for me, I think it's really good to see how the Empire ripples out beyond itself, but also kind of enables and emboldens people like Mako to be like, oh, well, if the government's this terrible, like I can be this terrible too. It's like a lead by example thing, and it trickles down to not just the big picture stuff, but the local planetary governments.
Yeah, and we're seeing like the remnants of the Clone Wars, literally, where separatist factions like the Techno Union used to own this facility, and then they're gone. So Mako felt like he could just take it over and make it his own and have his own child labor force.
Which is something the Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett have gotten into that too, of whenever there's a power vacuum, someone's going to step in, and it's usually not great.
Right.
Absolutely. And I'll say another thing too, just I mentioned before, like using the original Clone Wars series kind of as a reference book. I find myself still doing that with the Bad Batch and little things like when Chuchi showed up, a couple weeks ago, like, oh yeah, that, that's in other episodes. That's a person that we know from something else that I went back that I didn't pay as much attention to previously. So you go and you do what you do. You put on Clone Wars, and then they just start running because it keeps auto playing. And somewhere along the line, I ended up watching the arc where Ahsoka leaves the Order and that whole thing. And I forgot about the war memorial, that in this season of Bad Batch, we get that beautiful shot of, them standing in front of that war memorial. But then when I go back and watch that episode, I'm like, oh, that's the thing she runs across the top of to get away when she's being chased, by the clones, in that, like all those little callbacks and all those little things that I didn't pay as much attention to previously still hold relevance. And I think that, again, is just the beauty of the storytelling that we're so privileged to get.
I love stuff like that because, when they were making season 5, I assumed they were like, we just need Ahsoka. We need something for Ahsoka to run across.
Right.
Wouldn't it be cool if it were like this battle memorial? And so they make this thing. And then years and years later, it becomes this very poignant moment for Cody and Crosshair to stand in front of it and reflect.
Yes.
And it's like, so much of Star Wars happens by accident, but just they take so much time and care for even those little things of like, it could have just been a catwalk, but someone was like, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And then it opens up doors later on for great storytelling.
Well, in the episode also maybe in that 2-part series, when they go down into the lower levels and they're like, we're in a hangar, it belongs to my friends, they're not here right now. Like that's Rafa and Trace, right? Like that has to be, their little spot. And again, we're going, ooh, we remember that. Like it brings back all those things that just, the remember things that we enjoy about it, and the key little points of storytelling are just fun.
Well, I already said that I thought the episode was okay, but how did everyone else feel? Molly, what was your reaction to it? Was it overwhelmingly positive, or did you not like it, or how did you feel?
I thought it was okay also, but after I think watching it a second and then third time, it kind of like it gets better every time I watch it, and that goes for just about anything Star Wars related. But I really appreciated how it connected directly to the last episode. It was just a direct continuation of the story, and we got an immediate resolve of we got our ship back. So I like that they kind of wrapped that whole thing up in these 2 episodes and didn't drag it out longer than it needed to be, but it also connects a lot of the themes from the previous episode, because the previous episode, there was like tons of character development, like really juicy stuff. And you can see a lot of that spill over into this episode. One of my favorite examples of that is at the end of the episode when Tech is the one to check on Omega. It's almost like, okay, right. Let me see how she feels. Like he's got it in his head. Like, I'm going to do this. So good for him.
Didn't even think about that. That's a really nice point. Nick, how did you feel about the episode overall?
It was good. I mean, have there been more exciting episodes? Absolutely. Is it, did I want last week's story to get wrapped up? Sure. It kind of went the route that I thought it was. It felt pretty natural. I didn't think that it was I didn't think Hondo was the one that stole their ship. I didn't think there was some, crazy reveal that was going to happen, but it was a character. And kind of like Molly said, like the character development that we get because of this episode is really what where it shines. It's easy to watch. It's laid back. There's some adventure. I think I think you even said it in your video that came out earlier today, the Mission Impossible feel of, the break-in through the tower, all that kind of stuff. Like that gives it some excitement, but it kind of fits in a formula that we're very comfortable with, but doesn't make us bored. It moves the story along. So it was a good episode for sure.
Yeah.
Pete?
Yeah. I walked into it with the mindset that we knew we were gonna wrap it up. And then of course I saw the thumbnail and read the description. I was like, yeah, is that really? Oh, it is. And then it starts and you're like, yeah, okay, we're still right back there. And yeah, I think it was one of those episodes where, like Molly was saying, the first time through you're like, okay. And then the second time through you start to pick up on a handful of things. But it's so funny because we talk a lot about on our shows about the dreaded F word, the filler word, right? And I think that's one of the amazing things about this, and maybe this is why when we watch it the second, third times, they're better because you do catch on to some of the things that they're doing from a character perspective. I think you could have looked at last week's episode as 100% filler, but if you then looked at that second layer, it was probably one of the most important episodes for Omega. It was one of the most important episodes for Tech, clearly, and even Hunter and Wrecker had to take their different parts. So overall, I think the episode was fun. I think the thing that was surprising to me about it was, for a non-story pushing forward dramatic, like the big reveal ones that we all love to go and go, oh my god, did you see that? One of the things about this episode was it actually moved pretty quick. For a 29-minute episode, sometimes the middle story ones is what we'll use instead of the word filler, but the middle story ones tend to be like, okay, that felt like half an hour. This one went fast, and I think it was because, as you were saying, the action was kind of nonstop, and the action that we got was, it was Indiana Jones style action. It was big action set pieces, and once again, gosh, these things are they look so good. The camera work, the lighting, the use of angles, it pulls you in, and it's absolutely stunning to look at. So, and how can you not enjoy, just looking at the episode?
Yeah, I like that you point out how quickly and swiftly the episode goes, because it's like last episode, they were all kind of snippy with each other and fighting, and they were unsure of a lot of things, and so they were clumsy, and then they got a little bit of resolve for all that. And this episode, they worked together so well to like do everything, every little step. And like when they go and find the kid, the part where he like tries to take off and Wrecker just clotheslines him, I love that part so much. And then Omega is like right there to catch him. They were working like such a good team.
And it's funny that you bring that up, because one of the things that I have thought about, certainly last week and a little bit as we've come into this season, when Echo left, I feel like, and I'm not saying that it still isn't a possibility, but I feel like for at least for a short period of time, we may be heading towards some sort of dissolution of the core Bad Batch, like people going in different directions. Last week, like you said, a lot of dysfunction. And especially for Wrecker, I felt like last week Wrecker I'm always being asked to pick up things, lift another thing. And I was waiting for that frustration to boil over. So at the start of this episode, I thought we're going to get some more of that. We're driving those wedges in. And in that very early part, they're walking through town, or they're working on that speeder, and he's talking about how he's drank all his water and eaten all his rations. And of course, Tech's like, well, I told you not to do that. And it had that child, like, you told your kid not to do it, and they did it anyhow. And I thought we're driving another nail in that coffin. But then, like you said, that was that was it for this episode. They went right back to working as a cohesive unit, doing what they needed to do, really, because there's a mission. And that's, to go back to Tech last week, this is what we do. We're programmed to follow orders, do a mission, accomplish a goal. But it still shows those little cracks. And I love how you said it, Molly, the way it circles back to Tech being the one checking on Omega and making sure, that they're good, because it really is about the character details in these episodes as much as it is the action that keeps us tuned in.
The moments, like, I didn't really think of that in the moment either, but them working together, coming together to achieve a quote smaller goal. But there's been kind of a through line of the Bad Batch, except for Echo, but they've all been kind of okay doing these smaller missions. And to me, I've thought that maybe, like, I've been a little frustrated with the season when they keep going on these small missions, but I think that's kind of the point, that they're not fully living up to their potential. And now Echo is, like, he is doing their true purpose. But after this episode, I think that Tech at the end points out that, there are people like Mako out there, and it's still important to do what we can do, even if it is on a smaller scale. And I think the head writer, Jennifer Corbett, said something almost exactly like that, is that in season 2, they wanted to just explore that, they're not Jedi, they're special clones, but they're not superheroes, and just them going around and doing what they can where they're at in the moment is still an important thing.
Yeah, there's so many seeds that get planted in this episode in a lot of people's heads. And I feel like for the Bad Batch, by the end of this episode, they're probably thinking like, you know what? We're probably getting taken advantage of by Sid just as much as these kids were. And, the words of Echo echoing in their head about like helping the clones and helping the people who need the help the most. I feel like going forward, they're going to take it more seriously of being like, okay, do we go back to Sid? Do we go back to Ord Mantell? Or do we go find Rex and Echo and like do the right thing and go for this bigger goal.
Well, they don't have any real reason to go back to Sid, and I think you know, I mean, first of all, they've also, by the way, they have found an entire mine that still has a lot of this Ipsium stuff in it, so they can make some money and move along from there. Sid last week, really, I mean, I think all of us were like, what? Like pissed off at Sid. She really, she left him out there and showed no remorse at all. And you could definitely tell it bothered Omega. And I think Omega, that was one of those, you know, there's always the character that is the audience, and Omega for sure was the audience in that moment. Just like, wait a minute, and it was it Tech who said, you know, we saved your butt here and there, and she just didn't care. And so I like what you're saying, Alex, about how this kind of reminds them that, yeah, maybe they're just in the same exact situation as those kids. And I think, again, these episodes, which people feel like are not kind of carrying the story to the next waypoint, it's getting you there because they're going to process all this in that same way and start to ask those questions. And this might be the thing that pushes them to whatever they're supposed to be, whatever they're supposed to do.
It's interesting to see I was relating to the kids, or trying to, especially Benny, where he seemed to have like Stockholm syndrome of just like, Mako treats us great. And it's like, that's because he doesn't have any comparison. He doesn't know how other people should be treating him. But it's kind of the same for the Bad Batch too, because they spent their whole lives with the Republic, and then they got out into the real world, so to speak, and Sid is just taking advantage of them. I think they do know that, but it is a little bit of that. They're kind of naive and they don't know fully how the real world works outside of being a soldier. So it's interesting to see that parallel.
Well, and you use the term soldier, and it brings me back to something I was going to say that y'all both talked about that kind of sparked. When we bring it down to that smaller level, of course, we're seeing the Empire develop, but we've talked about already the power vacuum. And so then a Mako pops up, you know, and Tech's talking about there are other people that need help. One of the things that, of course, when this show was announced and came out, you know, 2 years ago, and we got the first season, as a child of the 80s, of course, it was Star Wars A-Team. Like, that's what this is going to be. And this kind of feeds that a little bit more. It feeds that, you know, soldier to fortune, guys for hire, whether they go back to Sid, like Pete said, or whether they go, let's go find Rex because Rex knows other people that need help. And it's good causes, not, you know, feeding this low level, you know, regional mafia boss or whatever she is. But it creates that ability for them to go out and help other people because they've seen the help. And we get those snippets of it with Omega talking to Benny. And he's changed or transformed by the fact that he's like, oh, they treat her as a part of the team, not somebody who works here. And then she's like, yeah, I'll share my food. I can get more. Like all those little tiny bits. Molly, you said it. All the little tiny things that happen through this episode build the character of who these people are. And I think the other thing that ties into it, and maybe we don't spend enough time talking about this, food-based economies. We get it in Force Awakens when Rey gets her portions. Now we have an episode of Star Wars where people are getting paid in soup, and I don't think we've had any soup-based payments yet, but I know sometimes on this show you guys do the drawing thing, and so that does connect to my drawing for the day. So if you want me to,
I'm ready for it.
I have a mixed media piece. Today's special. And we have the batch members hanging out, you know, hot tub style in a bowl of Mako soup at Mako's Diner. So, I mean, food-based economies are clearly now canon in Star Wars.
Molly was talking about that earlier. Molly brought up Lady Proxima. We brought up Ungar Plutt. And I was thinking of Andor because I still have Andor on the mind, but
the food taste in the prison.
Yeah, at least fighting for flavor instead of the food itself. But still,
Oliver Twist.
Just very Oliver Twist.
So
just very basic.
That's where my head went at some point.
But I think Alex, you said something about it in your review this morning, and I thought a little bit about it as well. And I think the timing of Bad Batch after Andor is great. As I said earlier, for me, it's great because now I'm back in it with my son. But it's kind of sharing a lot of the same insights about the bad guys, but in a way that is more palatable perhaps for a younger audience, right? First of all, it's
Mhm.
animation, but I mean, there's no backing away from things. Like, I still keep going back to a couple of weeks ago where a trooper literally killed himself, not even off screen, like right there. And that's kind of a big deal. But I think what's happening in the Star Wars world right now between Andor and Bad Batch is, for years, I mean, I've been in this fight since I'm 7 years old. I saw Star Wars in 1977 in the movie theaters. The Empire's always been just the bad guys, and they were kind of cool, and they had like all these, they were neat to look at. I always wanted Stormtrooper armor. Clearly, I have a helmet obsession, and so there's like, they were always cool. They were the bad guys, but they were cool. The Death Star, it blew up a whole planet, but whatever, it's cool. We live in a different world now, and I've said this before on our show. I've said this to friends of mine. In 1977, it was a different world. You could literally have black and white. You knew that the rebels were the good guys. You knew that the Empire was the bad guys. That's all you needed to know. In today's world, where from a media perspective, from a political perspective, from just the garbage that we see every day in the news, you can't just have black and white, and the bad guys can't be cool, right? You need to be able to show that the reason the rebellion, which is in itself at times a terrorist organization, is doing what they're doing, what they're suffering for, what they're willing to sacrifice for, is very real. It's not to beat the guys with the cool ships. It's because they are leading to other oppressive regimes. They are leading to situations where people to call it being treated poorly is such an understatement. So it's really interesting that I feel like Andor, which was the first one to really take a deep dive into that. You could even say Rogue One did to a degree, but Andor, I mean, we all felt differently about Star Wars after Andor. This one, it's interesting to watch my 10-year-old. So when Echo left the group, I was telling Nick earlier, we missed a couple weeks watching it together, and so last night we watched it, and when Echo left, he was like, why is he doing that? What's he doing? And it was this great opportunity to explain. He feels like he's a bigger fight. He's got more, he needs to do more. And so it's interesting that Andor has taken us there. Bad Batch is telling a similar story. And again, it's that small personalized way of telling the big galactic problem and making the bad guys really the bad guys.
Yeah, I think it's really valuable that we can look at Andor and pull out some themes, and then they can tell the same stories, explore similar themes, but for a younger audience, and show kids that, like, not all the bad guys are going to show up and blow up a planet and be just obviously like point at that and go, we all know that's wrong. But sometimes they can present themselves in a way that a bunch of kids are going to be like, no, Mako's great, he takes care of us. And it's like, no, that's not it at all. And to go on to the lighter side of things, like you bring up the rebels like Saw Gerrera, some people will take things too far, and it's not like, it's important to fight back against that, but also how you fight is important.
Right.
So I love that Star Wars can be accessible to and explore the same stuff, but for a bunch of different age groups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
And Star Wars, it grows up with its audience.
Yep.
So kids who were really young watching the Clone Wars are a little bit older now, and maybe they can understand, this transition of like, oh, bad guys are everywhere. Like, they can grow with these shows and learn these lessons that they may not have been able to catch before.
I was going to say, it reminds me of all the things that I watched as a kid, whether it was Star Wars, Indiana Jones, The Goonies, Star Trek, whatever it was, as a kid in the late 70s, early 80s, all the way up through, where it was like, oh, this is cool, and he has a whip and a gun and a this. But then I go back and watch it when I'm 18, 19, 30, 40 years old, and I go, oh, holy crap, like there's a bunch more stuff here. And it does have layers, and it hits us at different stages of our lives in different ways. The episodes a couple weeks ago, the double episode week again, I think I texted Pete and I said, I'm interested to know how Jack feels about these episodes, because those were very dialogue heavy, grown up specific, political episodes talking about the transition of the clones and that kind of thing. But it also reminds me of when we were all at Celebration last year. In fact, I think it was the panel where you guys were sitting right there in that row in front of us, and Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni were out on the stage, and the comment was made. They're like, animation's just not for kids. Like, this is all, this is Star Wars for Star Wars fans. It's not just, oh, well, cartoons are for kids and live actions for adults. Like, there's heavy stuff in there, but it's going to hit you at different stages of your life in different ways.
I think that's something special about Star Wars, is that I didn't know it was teaching me things. I didn't know it was shaping me when I was 7 and 8 watching it. I was just like, this is so fun. But it definitely affected the way I saw the world growing up. And I mean, that's what a mythology does. So it's cool to be able to grow up and kind of change your relationship to Star Wars, but understand it and just be like, oh man, that's how it affected me growing up.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll share my drawing here because it does have to do with growing up. And the one that I selected was because Wrecker reminded me that he may be more of a child than Omega when he was, I don't know if you can we see this? Yeah. Is bored, he's hot, he's starving. It felt like every summer day with my son.
That's a pretty good Wrecker.
Yeah,
that had some detail on it.
I'll be selling prints of it on eBay. No, I'm just kidding. But it's funny because Wrecker and Omega, and I think that's why they get along. There's that cool piece of their relationship where they're like brother and sister, and they're both childish, and in a way, technically, right? Omega's older than them, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But it's interesting to see just how each character is playing a part in the family. That those of us who grew up with brothers and sisters, we see every one of them within that group.
Molly, everyone else is sharing drawings. Do you want to share yours, or should I share mine?
Well, mine does have Wrecker in it, so. We haven't touched on the real hero of this episode, which is Gonki.
Oh, yes.
If it weren't for Gonki, they wouldn't have been able to find the ship. So I drew Wrecker embracing Gonki at the end. Because that was such a cute moment, and the little legs just swinging. I love their relationship, and now Wrecker can do his squats again with Gonki.
I did love that last week. Every Bad Batch fan was like, "Where is Gonki?" And they totally forgot about him until today, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we can track him." Or like, you should be more concerned about.
Well, and even talking about the little tiny details, like it spoke to me that Omega was the one that remembered that, and even Tech was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Like,
yep.
Not only is she a part of the team, going back to her conversation with Benny and him recognizing, oh, you're a part of this group, not just, the kid or the worker or the whatever. But even that, like, there was a tiny bit of admiration in Tech's voice when he was like, oh, like he didn't think about that, but she did. And it's the way kids think about pets. It's the way kids think, my kids look at things differently than I do, even though we could be thinking about the same one thing, but from two different perspectives. And she was like, oh yeah, he's still there. Like, he can hook us up. He's our connecting point. And I'm going, wait, you mean that battery back in the back? Like it goes both ways. And so I love that even those tiny little details show self-worth, her being able to be recognized by Tech, by the team as a contributor. Like, there's just a lot of good stuff in that. And so even in something that seems silly, like Omega remembering that he's still on the ship, like, it says a lot.
Yeah, I love that Omega remembers and is worried about Gonki. And it later, when they meet up with Benny, and Benny's like, oh, this old battery, like, he's just a battery. And she goes, like, not to us.
Right.
Yeah. And that kind of comes back around in the end of the episode where, Omega is talking to Benny about, like, you have the whole galaxy now. Like, you can leave, you can do whatever. And he's like, no, this is my home. Like, this means more to me than you think it does. And I liked that little connection. Because, yeah, it's just kind of like a dirty, hot mine in this like deserted planet, but to them it's their home.
Right.
So Omega's like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah, she totally gets it, because last week when she was like, wait a minute, the Marauders are home. We can't just run away from that,
we can't let it go.
Yeah.
That's something else that I think the Bad Batch is doing a great job of in this episode and in episode 3 and Andor as well with Ferrix. But like they keep showing us these planets that don't look great. They don't look like paradises, but they like the people there love it. They take pride in what they do and that they want to protect it. Just because it doesn't look great to me, I'm like, okay, but it's still their home.
Right.
And all of these people trying to find a different point of view for like Benny with Gonki and the Marauder didn't realize that was someone's home when he took the ship. No one thought, oh, well, Gonki's going to be the one that brings trouble down on us. Mako was like, the ship is going to bring too much attention. The battery is not an issue, but but he was the one because no one thinks that Gonki is going to be important. But it was so nice to have justice for Gonki this week.
Justice for Gonki.
And it's again, it's that personalization of everything. And I think that's what's so amazing with Star Wars 45 years later, 46 years later, is you're looking at things very differently, and the galaxy is huge, but it's super personal. And I again, I didn't even think of it until you just said it, Alex. You're right. Like people are, it's sort of the same thing when people are like, well, how could people forget all about Luke Skywalker and the Jedi by the time Force Awakens comes around? It's because it's not important to them. They're not watching the movies, right? So Mako and that entire group, they were able to take advantage of the power vacuum, but they it's not they didn't get lost in, or they didn't get pulled into the larger struggle because it didn't affect them, or it affected them, but they didn't need to get involved in it to get what they needed done, I guess is where I'm going with that.
And I have to say, you mentioned earlier, I think, Pete, talking about this episode, and you use that term, the Indiana Jones like action, the adventure. Of course, we get bridges, we get those dark red tones. Did anybody else get a little bit of Temple of Doom, the Kali Ma with the kids in the mine versus like I had that moment with Mako where I was like, this is the guy with the feather on his head. Like it's that same, Temple of Doom version of that. But
yeah, Star Wars
Molly was the one that pointed it out to me, and I was like, you're right.
Star Wars loves doing Indiana Jones stuff.
I have no complaints about that.
I don't either. And I know, first of all, I noticed the music right off the bat in this episode sounded very Indiana Jones. And then, we see underneath everything, it's all red and the bridge. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is
the showdown on like the almost rope bridge. Omega being
I actually have
dropped.
Indy holding a lightsaber on my desk. So if it has any crossover appeal, I'm your guy. I'm your target audience.
That's the multiverse. Right there.
That's right. We've got it all.
Well, that kind of leads us into my drawing, because my favorite moment was Omega being dropped. Well, she kind of like throws herself off. I really liked.
She felt very confident.
And I loved that confidence. So I tried to draw it, and then she looked more and more like Superman. So I added a cape, and then I was like, oh, it's a convor. It's a ship. No, it's Super Omega.
I was why is there a convor there?
I love it.
That's why. I really loved her just complete trust and faith in Hunter that, he's going to catch me, and I'll throw this droid off with me.
Her face.
It's the cohesion of the team.
Right.
Well, it's been 2 weeks in a row of an illustration of trust, right? Because I think one of the things that struck me the second time I watched last week's episode was Omega falls into the water and Tech doesn't even think twice, just straight after her. And even Wrecker, who is now in the last handful of episodes had to deal with heights. I mean, anybody who's got a real phobia, like that's no joke. That's not something to play, but he's got so much faith in the rest of the team that A, they're not going to let anything happen to him, and B, it's for the right reasons, and so he's willing to go through it. But it's this has been all about trust and faith, and it was perfectly illustrated in that one scene that you drew, Alex, because it was weird the first time I watched that scene. I was like, wow, that's almost too much. Like I suspend disbelief, but oh my goodness. But then watching it the second time, I was like, no, it's not a suspension of disbelief. It was a suspension of fear and utter faith that Hunter, it gave me the look, and we're gonna do that thing that we do, and it's gonna happen. So it's been, and they've gone back a number of times to the point of, we always find a way. We just do. We're just gonna deal with it together, and we'll find a way.
I had to scroll back to find this super chat, but yeah, Alex, you pointed this out when we were doing our commentary. Poor Wrecker having to deal with heights again.
I'm wondering if they're building to something with it at this point, because in the Clone Wars they brought it up. In season 1 it happened a couple times, but I feel like it's been more episodes than not this season. That Wrecker's like up high, and Rex like, didn't he get better? And they're like, this is him better. But every episode he's got to go somewhere high.
Well, and I hate to throw out my theory again, but if we're talking about Star Wars A-Team and Wrecker is BA, BA was afraid of flying, and they always had to drug him with like milk so he'd go to sleep so they could fly on an airplane. So, it totally tracks with this theory of who's who in the Bad Batch versus Star Wars A-Team.
And one of the finale episodes is called The Summit, so he's probably going to go up high again.
Oh, man.
Oh, no. Poor Wrecker.
It's like, for a while, it was just like, it's a fun running joke. But at this point, I'm like, what are they doing with this? This feels like they're really trying to make you remember.
Don't forget, Wrecker is afraid.
Just remember.
But Wrecker did have that awesome moment, too, on the bridge where he took that shot. And I love anytime one of the members of the Bad Batch does something that another member of the Bad Batch was supposed to be the one that's good at that. Like anyone who gets a really good shot, like Tech's done it before. I'm always like, see, that they're learning how to be more well-rounded. And I love that.
It's interesting you say that, because I didn't think of it either, Molly, but last episode, he wasn't allowed to take the shot because Tech was like, nope, it's too important, essentially. And then this episode he got it. That's interesting. See, look, an episode that people are calling filler, we've spent 42 minutes finding amazing things to talk about. It's pretty wild.
Well, that also is because that's our job.
Well, that's true. This is what we do. This is what we do.
I always try to keep in mind that, a lot of people watch these very casually and they're like, cool, next, and then go about their lives to do whatever. And those people obviously are not going as deep as we are and going, live for hours at a time talking and breaking down the episodes. So I get it.
My life.
Well, I think we're just spoiled. Star Wars as pizza is that comparison that's been made often, that even when it's bad, it's good. There's just different flavors, and you might not go in for a second slice of the holiday special very often, but
every once in a while you get that hankering.
Just every once in a while,
you just need it. That's right. You just need to hear B. Arthur sing a song.
Well, is there anything that we haven't touched on that anyone wanted to bring up yet?
So I wanted to see if I could ask a question of the three of you. How many seasons is Clone Wars going to have? Or Clone Wars? I saw Clone Zone at the top, and I went there. But Bad Batch going to have? And because I have a theory that they are set. Nick referenced before what he was saying about the dissolution of it, but I feel like they've actually started to plot where everybody's going to end up. I felt like in the episode with Gunji that Wrecker was right at home on Kashyyyk. Tech had a surprisingly strong interest in the racing, and I feel like Fee and Hunter and Omega had a pretty interesting dynamic of hey, we'll go out and we'll keep looking for stuff. So I guess Alex and Molly, you may know more than we do as far as how many seasons are planned, but do you think it can go beyond this season? I'm feeling like, how much further does it need to go?
I think it can. I think they're, especially after episodes 7 and 8, it'll be interesting to see where they continue to go with that. But I feel like they are telling the base story of this is the Bad Batch and their experiences in a post Revenge of the Sith world, but also we're doing a larger narrative of what happens to every clone. And I feel like there's still too much. I don't know if it's too much that needs to be told, or just there's a lot more that I want to see. So I'm hoping that there's a little bit more, or that we get that story somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably room for one more season, and that's just because of the larger picture of it all, and like where do all the clones go? Like, I don't know if they have time to wrap all that up as well, and just this season. So I think one more season is probably a good start, but I do think a lot of these episodes have been reminding the members of the Bad Batch what it could be like, what life could be like if they happen to just settle down somewhere. Because like that's another way that I took that conversation between Omega and Benny. Like Omega's like, you could go out and do anything, and Benny's like, no, things just got a whole lot better here, so we're gonna stay here and see how that works out. And I think Omega's like, oh, that is an option, huh? You could just stay here and live your life. So I wonder if that sticks in her mind as a way of like, oh, maybe I don't have to live on a ship and always be in danger. And yeah.
And I agree with that. And just to chime in, I know, Pete, you and I have discussed this a little bit just in our daily conversations about all things that we do, Star Wars and whatnot. To me, I look at something like this. I call it rocks in a jar. If you take a jar and you put a big rock in it, then those medium and small size rocks fill in. Then you pour the sand in, like you fill your jar up with these different, which parts of the plot are which. I think the big rock in the Bad Batch jar, ultimately the goal of this series is the transition away from the clones to conscripted. What is the end of the clone story? Because as I said before, I didn't grow up with the clones, unlike Pete's son, who's 10, who, like, as Pete has said on our shows before, his Han and Leia and Luke is, Fives and Cody and Rex. And like, it's a different generation, but that story cuts off kind of abruptly after the Clone Wars. And then we all of a sudden end up time-wise into the OT. So I think the ultimate big goal of Bad Batch is to tell the story of the clones. Where do the clones end up? How does that happen? We get teases of it, honestly, in Kenobi with that clone trooper who's in, the city panhandling, sitting on the ground. Like you said, Alex, 7 and 8, where we get, the conscription, all these different things. We're getting that transition. I think with 6 episodes left, we probably can't tell the rest of that story in this one season. But I agree with you, Molly. I think one more season gets us the rest of this story for that big rock. But the beauty of it is we get to tie in little things along the way with the medium rocks, the small rocks, the sand. And it could be Trace and Rafa. It could be, like Pete said, Fee and Hunter and Omega, as this story transitions and changes. I think that one more season puts a perfect little bow on the Bad Batch trilogy, creates this little, story that ultimately ends up with, this is where all the clones' big picture ends up. And this is how the Bad Batch had a role on helping get them there, or helping these small pockets of resistance, whether it's a Mako, whether it's a Sid who has her thumb on somebody. It has this ability to say there's usefulness for these characters outside of being programmed, created in a lab soldiers.
It's interesting that I think that at the end of season 1, we were discussing, we know there's going to be a season 2. How many seasons do we think it'll be? And I think it was like, they could probably wrap it up in 2 seasons. This could have been the last season if they wanted it to be. And now I feel the same way of like, yeah, they could probably finish it in one more season if they want to.
Right.
But I do wonder what the plan is, because I know animation takes so long that I think they probably knew the start and end points of the series when they got going. But yeah, I think there's still a lot that we need. Like Gregor and Wolf. I assume, where's Wolf?
Yes.
I assume he'll pop up at some point.
Yeah. I love, Nick, that you brought up the younger generation of their like Han, Luke, Leia being the clones. Because my nephew, a few years back, I remember, I think it was Thanksgiving, he was over and we were like, oh, let's put on an episode of Rebels, that one with Vader where he shows up and he's all scary. And like he watched it and didn't care about it at all. He was just like, where are the clones?
Yeah, he asked where the clones were, and he asked where Anakin was.
Where's Anakin? And I was like,
I may have shared this when I was on with you guys last year talking about Bad Batch, but I will never. It's so interesting the way Star Wars gives us all our own "I am your father" moment, right? My daughter, when we watched episodes 1 through 8 from beginning to end before episode 9 came out, she was surprised to see Palpatine and Sidious were the same, which we all just so took for granted for no reason because of the same actor. But she was like, I knew there was something wrong with him. But my son, who hadn't really watched the movies, I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. He was really always into the animation, and we watched Clone Wars season 7, and when the clones got Order 66, he was like stunned. He was like shocked. His mouth dropped open, and he was hurt by that. And I never thought about it, but it was so. It's horrible to say it this way, but it was so great to see that the story meant that much to him, and those characters meant that much to him, that the horror of what Order 66 really is for us, it was like, oh yeah, that's when the clones turned, the thing. But for him, it was a moment. It was an epic piece of the story. It was his "I'm your father" moment. It was his Sidious's Palpatine moment, and it was great that he had that. I felt bad that it shocked him so much, but it was really interesting. And that, to Nick's point, I think that's why Bad Batch is such an important series, because that's why he cared that Echo was going with Rex, and like he wants to see what happens to those millions of sort of nameless, faceless clones.
And I think that's part of my own just like desire for them to like, no, stay more involved in the clone story, because I love the clones so much. And I, like everyone else here, didn't grow up with the Clone Wars. It came out while I was in college. I came to it while it was on Netflix. That's when I first watched it, and was like, oh my gosh, Star Wars animation is actually great. And I thought it would just be for kids. But it's so... Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and that's exactly me, because I was born in 78. So I grew up, like, I saw, all the movies early on, a little bit older than you guys. But if Clone Wars came out in 08, like, I had been out of college for 7 years, and I was already married and about to have a kid, or 2 kids, because we have twins. But like, it was a thing that I came back to later. But honestly, it was Rebels that drew me in. Like, for whatever reason, even while Rebels was already on, like, I watched that and I was like, holy crap, I love this story. I still maintain today that with Last Jedi, Rebels to me is some of the best Disney Star Wars storytelling we've gotten. I love that series so much. And I'm not the target audience for that by any stretch of the imagination, but it also opened up these avenues to go back and check out Clone Wars stuff that I missed, to go back and plug into all those other things. So just like you're talking about with Wolf and Gregor, and when they show up in Rebels, I told Pete on the phone earlier today, I was like, as a general rule, I haven't cared about clones at all until Rex showed up in Rebels, and I was like, oh wait, I like Rex because he's Ahsoka's friend, and it goes a different path, but it works differently because the beauty of Star Wars is generational.
Yeah.
The last episode we did of this stream with Jake and Brian from POV, I think it was Jake that brought up that this show, or this season, reminds him of Rebels because it's a close-knit, like, family unit all living on this ship together. And I was like, I didn't even think about that, because we haven't done a Rebels rewatch in a long time, but we're about to.
Call me when you do, because I'm your guy.
I think it's a great bridge between Clone Wars and Rebels, which it's meant to be.
It really is.
It's linear. Oh damn, I said it again. I don't even know. It's straightforward. I gotta just use that word. I grew up next to Lake Lanier, and I can't not call it.
It's linear.
I'm sorry, I can't.
They're spelled different, but I'm going to give you credit for it anyhow.
Thank you. So, it's straightforward. It's not out of order, but it also, we get the occasional arc episode, which Rebels didn't really do. And obviously, there's a ton of clones. But yeah, I love the way that Star Wars can pull people in, and people like us can go from the movies down into animation, where the younger generation often goes from animation into the movies, and we all just enjoy it all. It's so fun. It's wholesome.
So fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had something else I wanted to say, but I forgot when I said linear.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
You mess that up. Well, I'll just bring up another note that I had down. I'm really loving all of these solid connections and friends that Omega is making throughout the galaxy. She's got Gungi. She's got these Ipsian minor kids now. If they ever need Ipsium, they can come back there. Like, I feel like at some point they're gonna, recruit the help of all of these people that they've helped along the way, and have like a big, maybe not a big exegol moment, but like something similar.
I actually think that's a great point to bring up, because that's kind of what Rebels did in a lot of episodes that people cried filler on for Rebels. Characters returned, the space whales returned. One of my least favorite episodes of Rebels is Iron Squadron. I just remember disliking that. But Mark Matten comes back in season 4 as a Rebel pilot. So there's absolutely a chance that a lot of these characters that we're meeting along the way will return.
Right.
Well, and that begs a great question. Pete said it, I think, when we texted earlier today. Benny has to come back, right? Benny, if you ever need a thief, call me. Like, there's another time for Benny to get called in for a favor, or...
And maybe what they're doing, I saw it, as I said, I was sort of seeing it as setting up for where the Bad Batch goes, but maybe they're exploring places where their clone friends can hide, where their clone friends can go and live out their lives. Yeah, but it's definitely, and I was thinking about it with the episode. I mean, Omega has like spent time with Bail Organa. Think about that, right? This little sort of character that nobody had any idea what to expect a couple of years ago when we saw her picture. She's in the Senate with Bail, delivering a file to Bail Organa to take down ultimately the clones, which is also kind of a weird way to look at it. But it's just interesting, these little connections. And I don't care what anybody says. I love the small galaxy perspective. I love these characters. I want to see them play with each other. I want to see them interact, and I think it's I'm down for it every single time. So
I'm totally cool.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm cool with the small galaxy, quote unquote, as long as they also expand. And I think they're doing both. So like Omega is a new character, so it is an expansion.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I was just going to throw in, we get kind of the costume trope, because like you said, she's, on the Senate floor taking a file. This week we get, she can come with me, but you can't dress like that. We're going to put a robe on her and she's still got her hat on. Like, it's kind of the same version of in Kenobi, where they've got Leia under the coat and we're walking, we're sitting like, okay, so what? It's fun. It keeps the story moving. It just, those little funny costumey moments where we're like, really? He doesn't know that there's like 20 people that work here, and there's this new one that he's never seen before, but it doesn't matter. So
I think Bako's just
makes
an idiot.
sense. Yeah, it makes sense that he thinks so little of them that he wouldn't even notice.
He doesn't pay attention. Absolutely.
Maybe that's a good thing to close on, is just Mako's end, because I've seen people say like, he died so stupidly, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of the point.
He's stupid.
Even in his last moments, he's like, I would rather die and take you with me than lose all my power. That's what I got out of Mako.
Yeah, he was. Star Wars has both some of the most engaging and interesting villains and some of just the dumbest flat villains, and Mako falls in dumb and flat, and I was not disappointed to see him go. I don't need to see him get his revenge. I don't need to see him with robot legs in the future. I think he's I think he's done. But it is interesting too, because again, this whole episode was about it was not about the villain. It was about, and in fact, it's the whole season, right? Because Crosshair's been in one episode. So there is no big villain other than just this evil empire, which is building around them. And so Mako is disposable, and that's great. And I was happy that he was gone.
Absolutely. And I'm going to jump in, because as Star Wars podcasters ourselves, we can't help but sometimes revert to host mode. So I'm going to ask a question to the three of you, Pete did. Talking about Mako, if you take the Mako character, like Pete said, kind of this flat general bad guy, holding power, who is Mako in another franchise, and I'll give my example was the Kali Ma leader from Temple of Doom. Like Mako had that power over the kids, power over the, but it could be Ma Fratelli from the Goonies. It could be any number of other people. Who has somebody that you want to compare Mako to in another franchise?
My super deep cut, and I don't even know the guy's name.
I know you're going to talk about.
Alex, is it at the beginning of season 3 of Buffy?
Yes.
Yeah, there's an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer where at the start of season 3, she's in a different city and she sees all these missing posters of like people who, like younger people who go missing, but those younger people are like drug addicts and they were homeless already. So she goes to like investigate, and turns out there's like this demon like kidnapping young people who, you know, have fallen off the wagon in some way or another, people that like quote unquote wouldn't be missed. And he's taking them underground and like making them work for him, basically, like doing just random labor. I forget what they're trying to dig up, but it's very similar because he's just like this dumb guy who is like stealing all these people and basically using magic to like keep them down.
Nice.
But yeah,
love it.
I don't know that anyone would
I've
know
never seen Buffy
that
in my life, but it sounds awesome.
It's fantastic.
I
just went straight.
Gordon knows when she was Anne.
Yep, that's the name of the episode.
Nice.
I was thinking of Fagin from Oliver Twist, but that's because Molly brought up Oliver Twist earlier.
Yep.
So,
totally works.
I would kind of say maybe Flag Smasher from whichever Marvel series that was. The
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just because it was bad guy, but yeah, no stakes. I mean, apparently global stakes, but didn't really see him. So, but I would say, and it's kind of good to see that the villain doesn't always need to. And look, we didn't know. I'd love to remind people that nobody knew that Palpatine or the Emperor was Darth Sidious. That he was had this master plan. When we saw Return of the Jedi, we just knew he was a bad guy, and that was okay for that moment in time. And who knows? Now that we've said this, Mako will become like this great villain in the Acolyte or something.
I think there's a reason they killed him off. I think they were like, "We gonna use him again? No, throw him in the pit."
I did compare Mako to Denethor for that one scene where he's just like scarfing down all that food. So there might be other Lord of the Rings people, Alex, that you could make that connection with.
It's a good call.
Love it.
Maybe Saruman and nah.
There's something there.
There's probably something I could find, but well, we've been going for about an hour, so we will let our guests take off. But before you do, please let everyone know where they can follow you and what your shows are about. And there are already links in the description if you want to check out Around the Galaxy and Podcast of the Whills.
Absolutely. I'll jump in first, and then I know Pete, we've got something coming up this week that he's going to promote. So Podcast of the Whills, Around the Galaxy have combined forces in the last year or two. We are the Streaming Star Wars Network. If you go to streamingstarwarsnetwork.com, you can find all the different places to find us. Pete and I are now hosting Around the Galaxy together, doing our interview show with creators, people behind the fandom, just getting into those one-on-one conversations. As Pete likes to say, if two Star Wars fans met up at a bar and went, "You like Star Wars? I like Star Wars." What's that conversation like? That's what we try to do with Around the Galaxy. Podcast of the Whills is not gone. It's our deep dive show. We're kind of changing that up, digging into that a little bit more sporadically. And then on Friday nights, we have Force Connect, which is, as we call it, sports talk radio for Star Wars, live call-in show. It's me, it's Pete, and it's our good friend Chris Ryans from Bro Axiom. The three of us hosting the show, talking about topics of the week, stuff that's on our mind, and then, of course, inviting anybody that watches to call in, click the link, join the show, be a part of the conversation. So I'm going to hit that part, but I'm going to throw it to Pete because we have something really exciting and fun going on Friday night that we want people to check out.
We are, I don't know if anybody watching or listening has ever heard of the Match Game from the 70s and 80s. It was a very cheesy, sometimes irreverent game show So we're going to do that Star Wars style, and we have a bunch of our friends. We asked Molly, but Molly's busy this week. We'll get her next time.
It's so funny because we actually like have our own. It's not match game. I don't know. Like it's more of like the Newlywed Game on another channel that I host. So I just thought that was so funny that we're both doing like these game shows.
Something about those 70s and 80s games that were just so cheesy. But we're doing that live on Friday. We have Nick, myself, Chris Ryan's going to be there. Maybe Puppet Lando might show up. Heather Antos is going to be one of our panelists, and a couple other folks. So it's going to be super fun. It's going to be super weird and crazy, and it's going to be Friday night at 9:00 on our YouTube channel, which is at streaming or the SSWN or the SSW network. Sorry, we just changed a whole bunch of our stuff. Like we're like remarketing and stuff.
We're still figuring out how to tell people to find us.
Just follow us on those ads on the screen, and we'll figure it out.
The links are in the description as well.
Exactly,
so.
That's it.
But thank you guys both for having us. This was so much fun, and I think the Star Wars community is it's a tight-knit community. It's a good community of good people, and I've said it before. I remember you guys were some of the first people I ever watched and listened to, inspired me to get into it, and it's great now that we can that I can say that I can call us friends, and that we can work together on shows and have some fun like this. So thank you so much for the invite. This was great.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you
guys so much for
coming back, and Nick, thank you for coming on for the first time.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. And like Pete said, I just echo those same sentiments. And also, Podathon, we're going to do Podathon again this year. Y'all were a big part of helping us with Podathon the last couple of years. Great prizes, shows, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to keep all that magic going too. But we're just great to hang out. Excited and thankful for being here.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We'll let you both go.
Thank you.
And have a great rest of your night.
You too. Thanks.
You too. Take care.
See ya.
Oh, I also meant to shout out that they just did an interview with Deborah Wilson on the network. With if you're like me and you're a fan of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and the upcoming Survivor, she plays Seer Junda, and was also in Mad TV and all kinds of things. So go check that out. But let's dive into some questions here.
Have I been starring these? I think I have.
Yeah, you have. Do you want me to pull up the first one?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Our first super chat is from Gary 24 fan. Thank you so much, Gary. I saw this earlier, and I'm already going to express my condolences, but thank you so much again for what you do. My sister passed away this weekend, and tonight I'm having a nice glass of her favorite wine while watching your show. Star Wars always puts me back to my center, and so do you guys. I'm so sorry.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
I hope this goofy talk helped in some way.
Yeah. I'll show my drawing again just in case that might help, because I did see a few people in the chat say, did they do drawings yet? So here it is.
I didn't point out earlier, but I'm going to point out now. The drawing looks a little dirty, Molly.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh no. Well, you got to see it, and that's it. That's going to be erased now.
That looks like maybe it should belong on some other part of the internet.
They're hugging.
Gonky's legs are going out to the side.
I wanted to show his legs moving, but take me off full screen.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no.
Look at what you've done.
I didn't even think about that. That's just how pure of heart I am when it comes to Star Wars. I just wanted to show his little legs moving around because he was so happy. But you're right. I should have drawn them embracing like
from the side.
2D from the side. I just like went to the part at the end. Chaos cavity. I have a couple of sips of wine and I turn into my alter ego.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, there's that.
That's my fault. That the second you pulled your drawing up, I was like, oh no.
I'm actually.
I mean, it's great.
No
It's a wonderful drawing.
I'm shocked no one in chat said something earlier, but
maybe it's just me.
Yeah. Well, now I'm gonna sell prints of that on an OnlyFans page.
Wrecker's got an OnlyFans page.
Yeah, not me, Wrecker.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go to Lindsay Brown has the next one. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Gonk Gonk. Do you guys ever think Gonky wishes it had a more creative name? It's not like any of the batch are called Cloney.
Oh.
What would you name your Gonk droid? That's a good question. Like, it's easy to criticize and be like, yeah, they should have thought of a more creative name. But now I'm like, ooh, what would you call your
clones? Can speak other words besides Gonk, and Gonk droids from this episode, even like he like makes some little garbly noises that aren't Gonk, which I didn't think Gonk droids could really do. I thought they could only say Gonk.
Yeah, I guess they can kind of garble some stuff. It always feels like some variation. They're like gonk gonk, gonk 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 gonk.
So if all you can say is Gonk, would you want to be named Jerry or Sam, or like you could never tell anyone your name?
I guess it's kind of like a Pokemon where they can just say their names, but still.
Oh yeah.
But there's so many Gonk droids in the galaxy. I would name my Gonk droid Badonka Gonk. Bagonkadonk? I don't know which one's better. But
Bagonkadonk. Badonkadonk. I don't know. They're both good.
I think Bagonkadonk rolls off the tongue a little better.
Yeah, I like that.
But you're right. Like none of the clones had enhanced creativity, so I guess they probably let Wrecker name Gonky.
Oh, and that makes it even cuter because he's like, well, obviously we should call him Gonky.
Yeah.
Jared the Dark Jedi. What's up, Jared?
Hey, Jared.
Thanks for the next super chat. Loved this episode. Made me happy to see Star Wars lean into its anti-authoritarian roots with such a pro-labor message. Also, we stan Yuri Lowenthal, who is, I believe, they voiced Benny.
Yes. Which I didn't know this until today because I saw people tweeting about it, but he voices, I think, Peter Parker in a Spider-Man cartoon.
Oh yeah, I think I read
the second
that.
I read that and then I was listening to it and I was like, yeah, I can hear that.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Thanks, Jared.
But yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to keep bringing up Andor, but I like Andor and the Bad Batch. I think are paired so well together, and they're sharing the same messages, like the anti-capitalism, the anti-authoritarian, and the prison arc. And this episode, I thought, explored very similar themes, but this one in a way that a younger audience could grasp a little more without having to see people get electrocuted to death. Also,
yeah.
So.
And because I listened to Force Center podcast's coverage on this episode of Bad Batch right before this, I will point out that they pointed out the connection also to Andor of like Marva not wanting to leave her home, her town.
Yeah.
That's Benny.
Mm-hmm.
Like Benny's like, no, I'm going to give it another shot because now that we're in charge and we have food, we could probably make some mad cash.
Yeah.
On this
immediately they're all just like, we're sharing the food. Easy. Mm-hmm. Just like The Last of Us. We're communists now.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people saying that Yuri voices Peter Parker / Spider-Man in the PS4 game, which I love. So now I'm like, awesome.
Gotcha.
That's a fantastic game.
Red Vega has the next super chat here. Is it possible that those minor kids become Infus Nest in Han Solo? They reminded me a lot of them for whatever reason. So like one of them maybe becomes Infus Nest?
I don't think so. We don't know where Enfys Nest came from. I don't think we have like her origin, her home world, but she seemed like she had a very specific past in Solo, a Star Wars story, where her mother had the same set of armor, the same mask. She said something along the lines of, when my mother wore the mask, Crimson Dawn came. So I think Enfys Nest inherited all of that from her mother.
Yeah. But it did give me a lot of Solo vibes where, the real Red 5 in the chat said what we were talking about earlier, Lady Proxima, the White Worm gang, like someone in charge of a bunch of young people and taking advantage of them, probably not feeding them very well. I don't know if we'll ever really explore Enfys Nest's exact like background, but I think that would be fun. Maybe in a comic or something.
I really hope we do. I mean, Aaron Kellyman still has that relationship with Lucasfilm. I feel like it needs to happen. Bring more Enfys Nest back. Also, I saw Andy say that Yuri also voices my boy in Gurren Lagann.
Oh.
I did not know that. Kamina.
I didn't watch that, so
you should. It's
awesome. I'm happy. I'm happy for you.
Oh, it's Simone. Never mind. It's not Kamina. Andy. Simone's fine. Kamina is the best, though.
That's the T.
Darth Nicholas has the next super chat and asks, was Mako a Zygerian? Regardless, I absolutely love that Star Wars has so many feline humanoid species, whether they be Zygerians, Cathars, Philicashians, Togorians, the Tiger Jedi Dooku killed in his one-shot canon comic, also in today's Yoda comic, etc.
Oh,
I don't want to get too far away from the Bad Batch, but in today's issue of Yoda, we jump back in time to a scene that was in that Dooku one-off that Darth Nicholas mentions, and we get to see that Jedi as a youngling.
Cool.
Yeah, it's neat.
Love that.
I don't think he was a Zygerian, but I had the same thought. Like the craggly head didn't look Zygerian, but his ears and eyes did. So I don't know. I don't know what Mako was.
The Zygerians having much longer ears, but he was kind of plump and juicy, so maybe he grew bigger and his ears stayed the same size. I don't know how that works.
there was a larger Zygerian in the Clone Wars as well, and it's more his skin just didn't look Zygerian. Like they're furrier.
He had like hard.
He looked
almost
like reptilian. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
He did have cute little cat ears, though.
So I don't think he's a Zygerian, but I do not know what species he is. He's not a Togorian. He's not a little tiger man.
Yeah, they haven't really been super going into species of characters in this show.
They've been doing some of it in the episode guides, which they're weirdly not doing weekly. Like the StarWars.com episode guides came out for the first 8 episodes all about a week ago. And I read through all of them, and that's where you can find stuff like planet names that weren't in the episodes. Like Saphatoma is on Seralonis, named for Sergio Leone, which like super fun detail. I understand why they didn't call it out in the episode itself, but I kind of wish that stuff were more accessible. But if you're interested, check out the episode guides whenever they come out.
Yeah. Let's see who's next. Andrew 711. Thank you so much for the super chat. Since this episode had them get their ship back and Mando season 3 premieres next Wednesday, my question is, if you were bounty hunters / mercenaries, what ship would you use?
Did we get this question last week?
I can't remember. I know,
or maybe it was on the Lego. Maybe it was on the Lego stream.
I know we've answered it before.
My answer is the same. I would want the Ghost, a VCX 100, which I think you said as well. But I want some place where you can spread out and you have different rooms.
Yeah, it depends on if it's just me or me and one other person, or if it's me and like 3 other people. You know, it's a party. So
well, this says if you were bounty hunters / mercenaries. So like, let's assume we're in the bounty hunting life together.
Oh, so we both have to pick the same ship.
Yeah, you have to live with me on a ship.
Well, I'm picking the Falcon because it has, well, okay, Lando's version of the Falcon that's nice and neat and very Art Deco, has the capes in the closet, and has a wet bar.
Okay, well, where am I going to put my stuff? Because you're going to take over that closet and I get nothing.
Why do you need stuff?
Why do you need so many capes?
Because I can wear capes.
That's why we should get a VCX 100, and we can you can have like a whole room that can be your closet.
I don't know. I liked the Art Deco that Lando did with the Falcon.
We can do that with a Ghost.
That's a lot of area to clean. Like,
you're
the Ghost
gonna make
is
me
huge.
I'm gonna have to live beneath the floorboards. That's where all my stuff is gonna be.
The Ghost is like way bigger than the Falcon, right?
They're pretty comparable. It's just I think the Ghost is like thicker. It has like floors, where the Falcon not so much. The Falcon has like one bedroom and a tiny closet. I don't think you could survive on the Falcon.
Well, I would obviously make some changes.
Yeah, you'd have to get rid of a lot of stuff.
I would need Han's little kitchen that he put in there for Leia after they got married. Or we could just compromise and do the Stinger Mantis.
Oh yeah, we did bring that up last time. Stinger Mantis is dope.
Because
it has
it's
rooms.
Small, but it's like big enough to spread out a little bit. Grease has a kitchen.
Yeah. Oh, it has a kitchen. It has a little living area. It's got the hollow table. Like, you have your entertainment, your sitting area. You've got everything you need. Stinger Mantis honestly might be the answer. And I think we arrived at the same conclusion last time. It just took us a second to get there both times.
Probably. That's what marriage is, folks.
Shaq Fu has the next super chat. Thank you, Shaq. Why did Vader stop Luke from striking down Palpatine? Would the Sith have infested Luke if he had done it?
Oh, I love a random non-Bad Batch related question in the middle of these streams.
This is one I've been asked before. I think that Vader genuinely was protecting Palpatine in that moment. I don't think he was trying to stop Luke from losing his soul or anything. I think Vader at that point in time was in a headspace of like, Palpatine is my master and I will keep him alive. Yeah.
And also Palpatine had Vader trained so well that like they just knew that that's how that was going to go down.
Yeah. Like, Palpatine's laughing. He didn't even flinch. He has Vader on that. And
he's
the
got
Darth
him on a
Vader
short
comics.
Leash.
Yeah. The Darth Vader comics are kind of getting into this now of just why Vader felt so under Palpatine's command that he had to do that. So yeah, I don't think he was trying to protect Luke at all. I think he was trying to protect his own status.
Yes. He had to until he just got to his breaking point. Like, he had to reach rock bottom for that moment to spring into action and do the right thing.
Yeah, finally.
Star Wars Sublight, thanks for the super chat. Molly drew a bonk droid, not a gonk droid. Oops.
Ooh. I like that.
Look, I don't want to talk about it.
It's okay.
Now that I can't look at it any other way now, and I hate it.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ruin your drawing. It's better knowing they're standing upright. But if you had just drawn a bed or something, like, it would have been a lot worse.
I can't. Shame on my house.
Oh, you're fine. It was a fun picture. But Darth Nicholas has the next super chat. Thanks so much, Nicholas. I love how you called the planet South Dakota in your latest review. The landscape of that planet instantly reminded me of my experience at the Badlands National Park, which in my opinion is way better than Mount Rushmore. I've been to neither. But yeah, that's just since we don't have a name for that planet, I was just like, yep, let's call it South Dakota. Why not? We got to call it something.
I would even have a hard time calling it a state like that, because yeah, I've never been to South Dakota. I don't know what it looks like.
I think it probably reminded me of
we talked about Utah. I think I called it Utah last episode.
Like any of those desert states out there. But I don't know why South Dakota jumped out at me. It's probably something from my childhood of like the Cowboys of Moo Mesa or something, like one of those old cartoons.
The who?
It was like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles competitor, rival. When Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out, and then you got like Street Sharks, and you got Biker Mice from Mars and the Cowboys of Moo Mesa. They just started making SWAT Cats was one of them. They just started making all these anthropomorphized. Is that the word? They tried to make
anthropomorphic.
Yeah, they tried to make all these like animal superheroes, and the Cowboys of Moo Mesa, I think, were from one of the Dakotas.
What?
Look, I didn't mean to go down this.
What channel was this on?
I don't remember.
He's for sure making this up.
I'm not.
What kind of weird Christian channel did you find this on?
It was I'm looking it up right now.
Oh no. I have to know, honestly, because Biker Mice from Mars?
Yeah.
That sounds like an old Grindhouse movie.
The Cowboys of Moo Mesa was an animated series created by comic book artist Ryan Brown, known for his work on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It aired as part of ABC's Saturday morning lineup in 1992 and 1993.
That's bold of him.
Yeah, he just got success off of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and was like, I can do this again.
Yeah, he's like, I can do this, but just a little different over here.
Hey, look, it worked for me. I liked it.
Apparently.
Hold on.
I didn't watch any of these. I mean, I didn't even really watch TMNT that much. I watched a little bit, but I was a Gargoyles gal.
Gargoyles is great. You were a gargoyle?
I was a gargoyle. Oh my god. What kind of dollar store off-brand cartoon is this?
I don't know. I loved it though. I watched all of them. Like, give me these animal superheroes. I was into it.
I'm happy for you.
Oh my god. Biker Mice from Mars. It looks so ridiculous. Like, even worse.
Now I have to see that one too.
I'm going to pull it up.
This is it, folks. This is what our Bad Batch streams are turning into. What?
They're so ripped. Anyway.
For some reason, I like that one better than the last one. It looks less...
The art style looks a little better.
Yeah, it looks less knockoff-y.
Let's talk about anything else.
Let's go to Joel Davis's next super chat. Thank you so much, Joel. I think one reason Bad Batch doesn't get the big push from Lucasfilm is that Filoni is not that heavily involved with the show. Hence, it has no major creative pull deeply involved with it. I think the reason why it doesn't get as big of a push is because the people that want to watch Bad Batch are watching Bad Batch. They don't feel the need to push it on to a bigger audience because the only audience that's interested in watching it are already watching it. Mando is like their biggest IP right now. Like they are going to push the crap out of The Mandalorian because Grogu is their cash cow and it's all that matters for making Disney that cash.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, even the Clone Wars season 7, like when that came back, just talking from like the creator perspective for a second, I thought it was going to be as big as The Mandalorian, just because in my head I was like, it is as big as The Mandalorian. To me, to have the Clone Wars come back to do the Siege of Mandalore, it's going to be amazing. Everyone in the world's going to care. And that wasn't the case because it's Star Wars animation just doesn't get as much attention from the more casual fans. Like, I don't think there's anything I could say to get my parents to watch the Clone Wars. I just they don't care. And some people are like that, where they're like, I like Star Wars. I don't care that much though. The Mandalorian is like a huge, huge show. And you just can't underestimate the power of Baby Yoda right now, of just how much he took over the world. So
his name's Grogu.
Oh, now you're fighting for Grogu. You were, when that happened in season 2, you were very against it. That's another stream we could talk about for.
I mean, I've seen Pedro say that exact same line in interviews. So if Pedro's saying it, I've got to say it too.
Okay. Well, I'm proud of you. You've shown growth these past 2 years.
I can grow.
I remember in the Book of Boba Fett when Peli picked up Baby Yoda and she was like, "What, your name's Grogu? What a terrible name. I'm not calling you that." I turned to you immediately and was like, "That's you."
It is, but like that's his name and it has been for 50 years. So I can't just name him whatever else I want.
Yeah.
I got to respect Grogu.
I think that you are correct in that the people who like Star Wars animation, I mean, like they only have so much budget across Lucasfilm, I assume, to throw at marketing. They're gonna throw it at The Mandalorian and the live action shows more than the animated shows. I wish that they would spread it out all evenly, but the fact of the matter is more people are going to care. They're going to get more new audience members onto The Mandalorian than they are onto The Bad Batch. The Bad Batch is like the next part of the funnel for people who watch those shows, and that's why Fennec Shand was in season 1, because they were like, let's try to pull some of those people in.
Well,
Baby Yoda might be in the season finale, and then Grogu. God, I didn't know you were such a stickler out of this.
I am now. Yeah. So my mom is in her 70s, and she watches a ton of TV. She's retired, so like that's pretty much all she does. And so I remember it was like a year or 2 ago when she was like going through and she was like, I want to watch all the Star Wars movies because I want to know what you guys are talking about. And so she did. But, she gets confused when she's like on her Roku and like using all the different apps. Like Disney Plus is just recommending everything Star Wars to her. And she calls me one day and she was like, I started a new Star Wars movie and I don't think I liked it. And I was like, which one was it? And she was like, I don't know. It was one of the animated ones. And I was like, the Clone Wars movie? And she was like, yeah, the Clone Wars. And I was like, wait, is it the movie or the show? And she was like, I don't know. And I had her like look it up and she goes, season 2, episode, whatever. Like she had started in the middle of a season.
What's going on? Barbara. She just needs to call us.
It's like, but she was like, I just don't think that's for me. And like, she was kind of apologetic about it. Like, I don't think I can do that. And I was like, Mom, I don't want you to watch the Clone Wars. It's okay. But
that's adorable.
So I get it. It's not going to be for everybody.
I don't know if I can do that.
I don't know.
I don't know if I'm there.
But she'll watch Brother Bear too, which is an inside joke.
Yeah.
All right.
I just want to shout out the people in the chat who are still talking about their favorite shows growing up, like Mighty Max, dope. Darkwing Duck, yes. Someone, Dino Park Dan said that SWAT Cats is awesome, and it is. It's the best one. That's all I wanted to say.
I don't think any of these people are our age.
Who cares what age they are?
What
they have good taste. Darkwing Duck was Disney. SWAT Cats, I think I watched on Cartoon Network. Mighty Max, I don't remember. My friend Chris had them all taped, and we just watched them down there.
See, I'm probably in the minority because I only watched Nickelodeon.
You had a sister who was 10 years older than you were, probably corrupting your brain instead of letting you watch awesome cartoons.
Yeah, but like I did watch awesome cartoons. I watched Nickelodeon, and I never watched any Disney Channel stuff because I thought it was just meh. But maybe that was because I didn't have anyone telling me how great it was. Like I didn't watch Boy Meets World until I was an adult, and I love that show with all my heart.
It's a great show.
But that wasn't.
It's not a cartoon about animals, but that's fine.
Look, Cat Dog, Ah Real Monsters.
Okay. Yeah, I watched those.
Come on.
Angry Beavers.
Angry Beavers, Rocko's Modern Life.
Mm-hmm.
Those were my jams. Ren and Stimpy I got into a little bit, which was a little it's like a little over the top.
Yeah.
There were some episodes of Ren and Stimpy that like kind of made me nauseous as a kid.
Yeah. Agreed. That's the same feeling that American Horror Story sometimes gives me now.
Kablam, yeah.
Oh, Kablam was sick. Sometimes when I try to tell you, like, I don't think I'm in the mood for American Horror Story, think of you watching Ren and Stimpy too young. Like that. That's how it feels.
I don't know what that feels like. I've watched too many murder documentaries. I don't know what that feels like anymore. And maybe that says something about me.
Anyway, Lindsay Brown has the next super chat. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Did they name the planet from these episodes yet? It gives me Elfrona vibes. Oh, with the desert and the rare minerals. That is interesting. I did not think about that.
Sorry, I got distracted and I saw Jane say Cat Dog was legit, and I used to know every word of the Cat Dog song.
We've gone so far off the rails.
I'm not going to sing it right now, but maybe tomorrow I'll be able to think of the whole thing. But
happy hour. Save it for happy hour.
I don't think any of them have seen it. Anyways, sorry.
Elfrona is a great guess. I did not think about that, but it has a similar vibe. That's where Charhounds are from in Light of the Jedi. So I think that could work.
I like that. Sure.
Okay.
I don't remember much about Elfrona other than that.
It's very rocky. Looks like a desert, basically. It could be Elfrona. I'm going to guess it's not.
Isn't it on the cover of one of the books? Like in the artwork?
Yes. Actually, yeah, it is.
Yeah. I like that.
I think it could be. I think it could be. I don't think it is. If they're going to follow the pattern for other planets this past season, they're going to name that planet after someone famous. Probably a cowboy, honestly. If it's from like... I'm trying to think of someone that was famous from South Dakota, or like someone... They'll Tuckerize a famous cowboy's name. That's what I'm getting at.
Cowboy McGee.
Yep. Cowboy Gitaween, because you got to have a like Tatooine, Dantooine. I was just trying to make it more. Cowboy McGee Prime. We have lost it. We've lost it. And it's not even that late. We got sidetracked talking about cartoons. Pirates of Darkwater is sick.
What are all these shows?
One of these days, we're just going to sit down. I'm going to show you one episode from all of them. They're all bad, I bet, now, looking back. But Pirates of Darkwater was super cool.
All right, well, I'm going to make you watch all of my silly Nickelodeon shows.
I watched Nickelodeon.
Okay, well, these were the superior shows.
Oh, I like them too. I have nothing against them. But I'm just saying you missed out.
All right. Sorry.
Well, we've got 2 super chats here from Thon Kabuka. I hope I said your name right. First one said Mad Max, and then another one came in that said Mad Max, as in these are the vibes I got from this episode, I assume.
Yeah, Mad Max vibes. I can see that. Because they were like, they all had like masks and helmets and goggles and face tattoos.
Yeah, the haircuts, and then having, I'm thinking of like Fury Road with having like that one overlord that tries to keep everyone in line. Immortan Joe. Yeah, I could see Mako being kind of an Immortan Joe kind of character.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Ice has the next super chat here. I enjoyed this episode. It felt like a natural continuation of last week's episode. Omega getting a broader view of the galaxy was great to see. Agreed. And then the next one here. Part of me was hoping that they would address the Sid issue after how last episode ended, but the episode itself was still solid, and I can be patient. Yeah, I think we'll get to the Sid stuff assumingly in the next episode, because
I think that they were like, all right, Sid's abandoned us, we'll figure this out ourselves. That was their primary concern, but I do think that needs to be addressed soon. Is that like, okay, what are we doing? Are we going back to Ord Mantell, or what's the deal? So and I agree.
Like we talked about, I think a lot of stuff in these past 2 episodes have made everyone in the Bad Batch realize that maybe working for Sid is not the best place for them at this moment in time. And like, especially after Echo left to go with Rex and like help the clones, that has been in their minds ever since then. Like, oh, that's what we should really be doing, but Omega isn't safe. Oh no, but like she's one of them. So
yeah, Omega isn't safe, and yet she still wound up dangling over like a lava pit or falling into a pit last week.
And she was in the Senate with Palpatine.
Yeah.
Literally like, oh, who's that?
I mean, that's a great point that Hunter keeps. He's very concerned about Omega's safety. She's still in danger all the time. So if he just can like wrap his head around that, then he'll probably go with Echo.
Yeah.
Joel Davis is pulling us back into the cartoon talk. I love it. Thank you, Joel. I loved Thundercats as a kid.
I did too, because it was
I never really watched it.
It was on Toonami before Sailor Moon.
I thought Dragon Ball Z was.
Maybe it was at some point it was on before Sailor Moon. Maybe it was before Dragon Ball Z, but like I know during the summertime it would come on around the same time that we would be putting on Sailor Moon.
Yeah, I've definitely seen some episodes of it, but I never really got into Thundercats.
Thundercats.
Oh, I do know that.
Yeah.
Sword's cool.
I used to like
I know Snarf.
Snarf is adorable. I always thought Chitara was awesome, and I used to pretend to be her.
How?
Well, I went as her for Halloween once, and I just had a cheetah print leotard on. Leotard? Yeah. And that was it. I was in middle school. I don't know.
It's pretty cool. Did anyone go as Lion-O with you?
No, no one knew what Thundercats were in my middle school, but like my sister got me into it. So my sister's 10 years older than me. So like a lot of stuff I was into, my friends were like, who, what? And then I was like, I'm just a cheetah, okay? I'm an Animorph.
Real quick, Kitty wants to know which Sailor Scout you were. This is a personality test. I know the answer, but I'll let you.
So let's get into it. So my friend group, there were like 5.
I'm going to use this opportunity to run to the restroom.
There were like 5 or 6 of us in our friend group. And so we each assigned ourselves an inner Sensei and an outer Sensei. So for the inner Sensei, I was Sailor Jupiter. Outer, I was Sailor Pluto. Those were who I identified as. And man, me and my friends in middle school, we like flat out wrote a script, like wrote it out with a pen and paper, a script for our own Sailor Moon movie. And I would pay so much money to be able to know how to find it. I don't think it survived over all the years of us moving, and like it's been so many years now, but like it was so good. Like it was really good. I was proud of it. And like we would act it out every time we went swimming over the summertime. We all had our parts. It was great. And yeah, I'm seeing a lot of, so Sailor Mercury for me. Very good choices. Thank you. Sailor Mars. Yeah. If anyone is into high fashion, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Valentina just released a line of shoes and bags that literally are meant to look like the shoes of the Sailor Scouts. So like Jupiter had like a sick pair of bright green combat boots. They didn't have heels on them like she did in the show, but they looked so good. And like these bright pink tight heel boots with like rhinestones all over them, just like Sailor Moon's boots. Like, oh yeah, it was Jimmy Choo. It was Jimmy Choo. Thank you. Alex, you know what to do for my birthday. I want those Sailor Jupiter boots.
They exist?
Yes, they're made by Jimmy Choo.
How much are they? $5,000?
I have no idea. Surprise me. Get me the knockoffs. I'm kidding.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, Thomas. Jimmy Choo. My girlfriend screamed it from across the room. Thank you, girlfriend.
I mean, they look cool.
I'm so dumb because like I literally sent my girlfriends who I just spoke about, where we all wrote a script for Sailor Moon. Like I literally was on Discord with them last week and I sent them the link to the Jimmy Choo stuff. And I was like, guys, this exists. Like we could do this.
You could get like a timeshare, but for shoes.
Yeah.
You all just go in, you get one pair together, and then you trade them around.
Although all of our feet are different sizes, but we can make it work.
We'll figure it out. Darth Nicholas has another super chat here. Thank you, Nicholas. Sort of unrelated, but I'd love to see a group of Omega cadets make an appearance. A reveal that one such cadet captured Omega and infiltrated the Bad Batch without them, and us, the audience, noticing would make for an intriguing episode. So, like, there were more Omegas, basically. Is that the guess?
One such cadet captured Omega and infiltrated Bad Batch without them.
So basically, kind of like Boba Fett did in the Clone Wars, where he was the same age, so he just slid in with a bunch of clone cadets and then tried to assassinate Mace Windu. But I don't think there are more than, I think Omega is unique. I think she's the one and only.
Yeah, I think so too.
Also, sorry, why would another Omega clone want to capture Omega? I feel like they would just become best friends.
Oh yeah. The other Omega would meet this Omega and they would have so much to talk about.
Yeah, I think they would just get along. Even if one was like, I need to kidnap that Omega so I can infiltrate the Bad Batch. The second she tried to do it, I think she would just be like, this is a mistake. She's great.
The Omega that we know would be like, listen, what I've got going on is amazing. We've got our own little family. We go on adventures. I know how to use this cool electro bow. And the other Omegas would be like, yeah, sign me up. Where do we go? People in chat are saying either 5,000 or like 1,500 for those boots.
Or 15,000.
That's probably the Sailor Moon one that's like literally all crystals.
Still.
A girl can dream.
Well, Ice has 2 more super chats here. Thank you, Ice. It was just going back to the Sid issue. It was just something I thought the episode would cover, and that's not a criticism. I just had to make some mental adjustments as I was watching. And the next one is, yeah, I definitely agree with the next one. Did anyone else just yell "thank you" at their TV when Omega mentioned Gonki? Honestly, after last week, that felt perfect. Had to be planned. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the writers were like, let's let everyone freak out about Gonki for a week and then bring him up. Because, yeah, every Bad Batch fan was like, did Gonki also get stolen? Did we just see the last of Gonki? That, like, everyone was really worried about Gonki for good reason.
Literally, like, if you're a patron and you go to our Patreon and you watch our, we put out reactions to all the shows that come out. But today's reaction that I put out, I think I literally went like, thank you. As soon as she brought up Gonki, I was like, the hero, finally.
Yeah, the fact that Gonki was used to save the day, even if he didn't do it himself, but he was integral in the recovery of the ship, was good to know.
He's the hero we've always needed. And Shaqfu has another super chat here. Sid will come through for Bad Batch by the end of the series, even if not right away. She's not a total scumbag, but the Batch do have to grow beyond her. Yeah, I feel like with that racing episode, and Sid kind of was like, I can show you that I'm not this terrible bad person that you guys think I am, but so far she's not doing a great job of that. Mm-hmm. But I think she does still have room to make that happen. It's just she has to choose to make that happen. But my whole thing this whole time has been, I think Omega needs to see people betray them and stay bad. Like, she needs to learn that some people don't change for the better.
I think that Sid will come around, but not right away. I agree with Shaqfu, basically, is that the Bad Batch is going to move on, and Sid will eventually have a chance to actually do something good, but maybe without any reward, just from the goodness of her heart. If that exists in there, I don't know, but I do think that because it's a Star Wars story, and because they have offered up this thought that, like, oh, Sid might surprise us, she might be trustworthy after all. Since they said that early on in the season, I think eventually we're going to get there. But right now she is, like Molly said, not doing a great job.
Yeah. Michael Garza, thanks for this super chat. I love this version of Saturday Morning Explained. Honestly, like, that would be such a fun random episode, maybe for like the Patreon, to just like talk about our favorite cartoons growing up.
We could just trade off watching different, like making each other watch something.
Ooh, yeah.
Because I mean, I don't actually remember any specific episode of Biker Mice from Mars. I just remember liking it and thinking it was cool. So watching it now would probably be very cringy. I also wanted to bring up this chat just because I liked it. Kate Does Nature said it was sweet seeing Record looking at Lula when they got their stuff back. I noticed that too.
He was like, not only did we get our ship back, we got all of our stuff in the ship back, which includes Lula. Oh,
I like that he gave it to Omega, but he's still like, that's mine.
Yeah, he's like, oh, Lula, I missed you too. Garth McMurray, thanks for the next super chat. This episode proved we need the Gonky and B2 Emo show. Do you think they would get along?
Well, we don't know what Gonky was saying to Benny. If we were to translate that.
I think he has a potty mouth.
I'm sure he does. I mean, that's just the assumption for R2, Chopper, Gonky. You just assume droids are saying the worst thing.
Just a string of expletives. If he's not saying gonk, we know he's saying something bad.
But I believe we talked about this last week, that Gonky and B2 Emo teaming up would be perfect because B2 always needs a charge and Gonky is a walking battery. But Gonky is also defective, so he also needs a charge.
They would have that. They would be like two old men at a bar just talking about how they can never keep a charge and everything is hard and blah, blah, blah. People underestimate them. And
Gonky. Oh, I miss B2.
Me too.
Tan Kabuka has another super chat. Thank you, Tan. Feels like a setup for 4 non-Imperial villains. Shame, in my opinion. Why is that a shame? That there are other... I think it was good to explore. I said this earlier on in the stream, but to show that the Empire leads to people like this becoming emboldened and empowered, and seeing that, like, oh, if the government that controls the galaxy can act this way, I can act this way too. So, I don't think they're setting up to have them replace the Empire as the primary villains or anything.
No, it's just like we said earlier, it's showing the batch that evil is everywhere. They can't just escape evil by saying we're not going to stay on Coruscant and help with the main problem. You're going to keep running into people like this and problems like this, and slowly, hopefully they'll realize that and go to the direct source of the problem.
Oh, Tan said they just meant they want high stakes. Yeah, I mean, I get that. I do too. This was not my favorite episode. Yeah,
we'll get there.
This was not my favorite episode of the bunch either. But I still think it was worth exploring.
Yeah.
And Ice has another super chat. Thank you, Ice. I also thought we might focus on Hunter and Wrecker this time since Tech got the spotlight last episode. I like that he got that final moment with Omega, though.
Might focus on Hunter and Wrecker. Yeah, I think we'll get there.
It seems like season 1 focused a lot more on Hunter, Wrecker, Crosshair. Season 2 has been giving more spotlight to Tech and Deco. And so it'd be nice if they could balance that out through both seasons and just kind of cycle through all the characters, but it's okay. And I was going to say that you pointed out that Tech was the one to go over and have that final moment with Omega, and I thought that was really nice. Something I did not catch watching the episode, so I thought that was a good observation.
Yeah, we haven't had a solid Hunter episode yet, but we do see little improvements with Wrecker, like how he had been complaining the whole time, but then he really just kind of got his ish together, and was a member of the team, and at the end there he took the shot that needed to be taken. You know, he was still focused.
Yeah.
And I think that was because they were working well together again.
Yeah. I just, none of the focus was on any of the Bad Batch this episode so much. I think it was more about the villains and the people that they affect. I don't know that Omega, I don't know if she changed a whole lot, but she got a new perspective from Benny. Tech and Hunter and Wrecker were basically just like focused on the job the whole time.
Yeah, they were all focused on getting their home back. And then once they completed that mission, it kind of leaves it open-ended to be like, okay, well, now what? Sid has, you know, effed us over too many times. Do we go back to her? Do we go back to Rex and Echo? Like, they're kind of at a crossroads right now.
And Ice built off of this with another super chat, says, I feel like this episode could foreshadow what the Batch could do. Helping clones can't go too well. Yeah, we know that from just future Star Wars stories, but so they could end up helping people like the miners, making a difference, but on a smaller scale. I know that Nick is still in the chat, popping in here and there, but him bringing up the whole A-Team vibe just kind of jogged my memory. I never watched the A-Team when it was on, or the movie, but I know that it was an adventure of the week kind of episode or series where they would go around and just help people. And it does make more sense when you look at the Bad Batch that way, where it's like occasionally we do the big picture episodes like 7 and 8, but for the most part, they could just go from planet to planet being like, who needs help? We're a cool team that gets stuff done.
Yeah. And that's what Rex is doing right now. And it's one of those things where maybe the future of this series, this show, is like, once people like the Bad Batch or Rex and the rest of the clones that we see in Rebels, like once they figure out that the fight with the Empire and the clones like isn't going to be necessarily one way or the other, but like I think some way they'll hopefully find a safe haven for the clones, and then once that happens, if they want to, they can continue to go out and do these little missions and continue to be part of the rebellion.
Yeah. I'm fine with the adventure of the week stuff. I think if they could balance it out where it wasn't just like the beginning, very middle, and very end, where if it were just like every other week, it's like adventure of the week, do something with the clones, adventure of the week, back and forth. I would love that, but like this is what the series is, so I'm on board. I'm not gonna whine about it every week.
That's not what we do.
Well, I think we need to start wrapping it up because my voice is starting to go. My allergies have been messing with me the past 2 days, and I was like, I've been feeling pretty good, but my throat is starting to go.
We hit the 2-hour mark, but Simon Carr, thank you so much for the super chat. I have to go, but thank you, Molly, for that bonky picture.
They have a couple name now.
Best laugh of the evening. You're welcome. That wasn't my intent. I just want to, we want to keep this channel family friendly. I just want to put that out there.
That's what you keep saying.
I know.
Then you draw pictures like that and you say the chaos cavity is your your alter ego, and look, here's where we're at.
Wednesdays are long days. I can't help myself.
They are.
Francisco Gios, I don't know about you guys, but now it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me now that they did get the Marauder back, since Omega keeps saying it's home for her in the Bad Batch. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they needed it.
They had to get their home back. And now that they do, it's kind of like, well, is this our home? Should this be our forever home? I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if they ever decide to go somewhere else and not just treat their ship as their home. because Omega's the only one with an actual room. But
that's true.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's going to be it for us. Thank you for the super chat, Francisco, by the way.
Yes.
We're gonna
thank you to everyone who sent in super chats. And I have to go wash off all the dirty thoughts and feelings that I have now because of my drawing.
You did this to yourself.
I didn't mean to. You know I would admit if I did, and I
know,
did not.
I know. Oh, I saw the shock on your face when you realized.
I'll clip that out.
we're gonna be back tomorrow to keep building our Lego Razor Crest. If you want to hang out, then we'll be streaming Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, and then I think we're gonna be off stream until next Wednesday, and we're gonna start The Mandalorian. So we're gonna change how we do things. Wednesdays will be our Mandalorian streams, and then Thursday we're gonna combine our Lego stream with the Clone Zone, basically.
Yeah. So we won't be able to have guests on those Thursday streams because of our setup over there, but we'll still be talking through the episode, taking your guys' questions the whole time. We'll have guests on the Mando streams every Wednesday, and we have some amazing guests coming up for those episodes. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into The Mandalorian, as I'm sure all of you are. So, but we're going to keep on covering the Bad Batch just as much. Thank you to Pete and Nick again for stopping by tonight. We are done having guests on for the Bad Batch, but we're going to keep on having guests for the Mandalorian. So we're going to keep them coming.
Exactly this.
The
Andrew
Lego
711.
Clone Zone,
The Lego Clone Zone. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be a good time.
I'm excited, but right now I'm tired. And and Kitty, a book review this week, maybe? Yes. Tomorrow or Friday, one of these upcoming days is going to be the Battle Scars review. The embargo lifted today,
I think it was tomorrow.
Yeah, because of the Bad Batch, I saved it for tomorrow. But
yeah, all right.
Okay,
let's go get some dinner.
We need to go eat some dinner. But thank you all so much for hanging out with us and chatting. We will see you tomorrow for our Lego stream, and then next Wednesday for Mando. So have a great night. May the Force be with you.